Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and with us this evening is Select Board member Pat Wojtas. Pat's been on the board for many, many years, and she'll tell us, I'm sure, during the course of the conversation about her experience level, and that's generally how we start the show off, Pat, is we ask each guest to just give us a very brief biographical sketch in terms of your time in town, your service, or whatever it is that you would like to talk about to sort of introduce yourself to the audience. So, go.
Okay, well, I grew up in town. Chelmsford High School graduate. I've been involved with with things around town for a long time. And several years ago, it was probably 13, 14 years ago now, I decided it was time to run for something. So initially I ran for the library trustees. I won a seat on that board and really enjoyed that, and thought I would move up to the what was then called the Board of Selectmen. That was in 2007. Mm-hmm. So I've been on the board pretty much since then. There's been a couple of gaps in my service. So it's been 12, 13 years now that I've been on the board.
About 12 to 13 years actually on the board with board service. So I'm going to fill in a couple of gaps for you.
Okay.
Pat also has been a town meeting rep for many years. Mm-hmm. During that time. And I actually remember when you first ran for the library trustees. I don't know if you remember this, but I'm going to remember it. You and I both appeared for the first time on Tom Cristiano's show. You were a guest, I was a guest. I have no idea why I was there. I was a town meeting rep at the time. I had just been elected, actually. And you were on that show. So, and I remember that,
Okay.
So that was quite a while ago.
It was, that's for sure.
Quite a while ago. It may have been 20 years anyway. When were you elected to the library board the first time?
So that would have been 2004.
Okay, so 17 years. Yeah, that's right. And then within 3 years, you did. You moved up to the select board. So that was quite a jump. And you've been in that service more or less ever since. So you have. Now, do you have more years than George does, or is it about the same?
It's about the same because of the gaps that I have, and he doesn't have gaps, but I think I probably outrank him by about a month.
By about a month, okay.
But he'd probably tell you it's the other way.
Well, that's
okay.
It could be.
Yeah.
Well, unlike other hosts on CTM, I don't keep a schedule, so. But I do know this is your first time on my show.
It is, that's correct.
I think Tom Cristiano could tell you with absolute precision how many times you'd been on one of his shows.
Yes.
I don't keep those kinds of records, but Vilu does. So if I ever need that information, I can ask him. So, well, we're very glad you're with us. It's always good to get a member of the select board, and I'm getting real good at this. I don't think I've said the other term now for a while.
That's good.
Well, I wondered how long it was going to take me to make that transition. It's probably been 3 or 4 months, but I'm
okay.
I'll probably slip occasionally, but I'm working on it. Okay.
Well, with more and more communities, switching over, right. I think it helps.
Oh, without a doubt, and I think most of the towns around. I don't think Bill Rickett has made the change yet, but right. I think most of the other towns.
And some have done it just informally. You actually have to, go through town meeting and then get it approved by the legislature.
Right.
So that took a lot longer than it needed to. So I think some communities just change it and don't tell anybody.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything. I mean, unless you're doing something, if it's a legal document or
right.
something, you have to have the correct name. But you're right. I mean, I think it's perfectly okay to say select board when it technically may not be that way. So that's good. And that change, I think, was probably overdue.
Yes, for sure.
So. Well, I'd like to start off just by asking a couple of questions, and then what we want to do this evening is get into a discussion of the organization of Chelmsford government, because I find in talking to residents, there's still a lot of confusion as to the organization, who does what, who's responsible for what, where the board's authority starts and stops and that kind of thing. So I think it'd be good to, it's always good to have that kind of a discussion periodically, and a select board member is probably about the best person to have that discussion with, especially somebody with the number of years you've had on the board. But one of the things that's very interesting, or should be interesting to people, is the changes that are going to come about as a result of the recent federal census, and that's population shifts. And Chelmsford has picked up, was it 600 or 700 people or so in the population, somewhere around there?
Yeah, I think it's actually closer to 1,000.
Is it really?
We're over 36,000 now.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
36,000 people. That's incredible. It's enough so that, and of course, as a result of the census, whether or not we had picked up population, there would still be redistricting.
Correct.
But the population increase in town is enough to, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to drive a change in the number of precincts that we have in town. So
Right.
Presently we're 9. So what is as you understand it, what is the plan going forward for that?
Well, as you may know, the maximum you can have in a precinct is 4,000. So we have to have at least 10, because we're over 36,000.
Right.
It seems that the registrars are proposing maybe having 11, so that there's some opportunity for growth in some of the precincts, because there may be some development, as you know, up in the UMass West area.
And that'll keep the numbers of reps down too, if you have 11 as
Right.
opposed to 10. Right.
Right. If we have 11, the way our charter is written, instead of having 18 per precinct, we would have 15.
Right.
Although it comes out that we have a few more. We'd have 165 instead of 162, but they'd be dispersed more
Right.
across the town. And maybe we'd have better chance to fill all the seats, because that can be an issue very often.
Yes, it can. And we talked a little about that Monday night at your meeting, is filling the seats. So I understand that the Select Board has actually submitted a letter. Now, to whom did this go? Did it go to our redistricting committee at the state, or asking to, when they redraw the lines for the state districts, we presently have, as most people know, we have 4 reps. So the desire is to get that number to be less than 4. So
Correct.
Can you tell us about the letter that you folks wrote?
Sure. It went to the committee that's working, the Committee on Redistricting. The co-chairs of that, Senator Brownsberger and Representative Moran. And so we made an argument about how we thought the town of Chelmsford could be consolidated a little bit more, I guess you could say. As you probably know, our Senate district, talk about gerrymandering.
Yes.
That goes, from Lexington to Waltham to Weston and then up to Chelmsford. It amazes me how much geography that covers. So our suggestion was to possibly combine some of the communities in the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, because I'm a member of that council, and we do a lot of things together. And I think the regionalization in that regard would be more effective. And like I said, we also made some suggestions about the state rep districts. We have one district that right now there's just one precinct from Chelmsford that's in the district that Vanna Howard
Right.
is in. It's interesting because yesterday I was reading the Boston Globe, and there's a group, I think it's called Mass Votes, that has come up with a redistricting proposal, and supposedly the co-chairs of the redistricting committee are going to look at it, and I liked it, quite frankly. The Senate district that they proposed for us would include Lowell, Chelmsford, Westford. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it.
I don't know
too.
anything about it except what you just said, and I like it already.
Yeah. And as far as the representatives, Jim Arcero would, you may know that he has all of Littleton, all of Westford, and 3, I think.
Is it 3 precincts in
3,
town? Okay.
yeah. Although, that's going to change,
Yeah.
obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And that would change. He would lose all of Littleton, and he would pick up a chunk of Chelmsford. And that bodes very well for us, because we would have almost as many people in Chelmsford in his district as there is in Westford. Westford's about 24,000 people, I think a little less than that. And the average district is about 44,000 people.
That's good.
Yeah.
We're more closely aligned politically, I think, and philosophically anyway, with Westford than we are with Littleton. So yeah,
Right, yeah.
And the Lowell delegation, I don't think has anything to worry about because they picked up population.
Right.
So I don't think any of the current reps there are in fear of losing anything. Now, what did you recommend, if anything, to the? Did you recommend a number of reps? Instead
Well,
of 4?
we asked for 2. We asked to bring
You
it
asked
down.
for 2.
To bring
Okay.
it down to 2.
And you'll settle for 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, we figure we might as well ask for the moon and see what we
Yeah, you
get.
could have asked for 1.
We could have asked for 1, yeah.
Yeah, that's. I will be shocked if we don't get the 3. I mean,
I would be too, yeah.
because I think it would be actually with the population shifts and the increases. I think it would be hard for them to make us a 4 district again.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
I would hope,
we're
yeah.
pretty sure we're going to get the 3, and
Yeah.
keep your fingers crossed. We may get the 2, and
Yeah.
I think that would benefit us. So
Yeah, and as you know, originally we became 4. It was kind of a punitive measure
Yes, it
against,
was.
against Carol Clevin, and
Yep.
we've suffered now for 20 years.
20 years.
So it's
yes.
time to, you know,
Right the wrong, as
right
they
that
say.
wrong. Yes.
Well, that's very good. That's all good information. I'd like to shift gears a little bit now, and because we said we were going to talk a little bit about or actually quite a bit about the way the town is organized, and as more people over the last 2 or 3 years, at least this is my observation, more people seem to be getting interested in the local affairs. You find more people speaking out. You see it on Facebook. You watch the meetings on TV, and more people seem to be attending the meetings, or they're tuning in on the Zoom
Right.
thing. So people seem to be plugged in. And I think the recent development projects we've had in town over the last 3 or 4 years have probably been the key drivers in sparking that kind of interest. But we have other infrastructure problems as well. So I'd like to take just a minute and kind of pick your brain a little bit, or get your opinion on some things, and about the way we're organized in town from an administrative structure, and how effective you think it may be, or if you think it isn't effective, maybe some changes that we could consider in the future. So I have 4 slides, and I'm calling on our producer now, and these are just sort of guides. And just for the benefit of the audience, the town of Chelmsford is the governing, the controlling document that sets the stage for how the town is managed and administered is the municipal charter. And a charter is a document that specifies the things that you see on the slide there. And the takeaway really is that you can consider that the charter of Chelmsford is really the town's constitution, I would say. I think that's a pretty accurate characterization. So the next slide, and I'm going to get your comment on this in a minute, Pat. The way we're organized is we have a select board, and this slide is a little bit outdated. I did this a couple of years ago, and it was called the Board of Selectmen, but it's the same
Right.
thing.
Right.
The select board functions under our structure as a board of directors, and they set the policy objectives for the town. And then the select board hires a town manager to actually run the town, okay? So next slide. And these are the responsibilities of the town manager. He's the chief administrative officer, and he gets to hire and appoint all of the operative department heads in town, and also the operative, what I call the operative or the guiding or the policy-making boards of the town as well. And the select board does have approval authority, and we can talk a little bit about that in that case, but it is the town manager that is directly responsible for making the day-to-day operational decisions regarding how the town functions. So next slide and last slide. Although as I said, the town manager is the person who actually runs the town, that doesn't mean that the select board has absolutely no involvement. And I think the degree of involvement that the select board has can be a function of many things. It can be a function of the style of the board, the way they like to manage. And, but in any case, the board can have input into the operational management of the town, but they have to do it through policy initiatives and policy directives. And for example, a select board member cannot pick up the phone and order the chief of police to do something.
That's correct.
Or the head of the Department of Public Works. He can't do that. If he feels that something needs to be done, then it probably would be brought to the board in a public session and discussed, and then maybe given to the town manager and, you know, can you look into this? Can you take some action or let us know what's appropriate, that kind of thing. So have I described all that accurately?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I mean, I guess I would say sometimes as far as issues in the various departments, when I'm out and about, like this morning I was at the Senior Center for the Veterans Breakfast, and every time I go there, there's at least 2 or 3 people that will come up to me and say, hey, what about this or what about that? And most of them are not things that I have direct control over, but I can, you know, I keep a list, and then like every other week or so, I go talk to the town manager and I say, I had questions about this and this. And I think if it's a, you know, if it's not a critical issue, if it's just a, you know, process or something like that, that there's almost no need to mention it publicly. I mean, maybe sometimes that would help other residents, you know, if they have a similar problem, but sometimes people tell me these things because they don't want it in a public forum.
You know, that's a very, very good point. I hadn't considered that, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And let me back up to something you said, because I'm not sure I understood it correctly, so correct me. Did you say that the people you talk to generally understand that you don't have direct authority, or they don't understand?
I guess it varies. I mean, they
Yeah.
think in you know, bottom line that the board does, since we
Yes.
are the you know, we are the boss basically of the
The
town
executive
manager.
authority of the town.
Right, but still, each of us is only one of 5, so we can't make unilateral decisions about what the town manager is going to, you know, require his departments to do. As I said, you know, I'll bring these issues before the town manager and see what feedback he might have or suggestions. It really is interesting how, you know, how many issues there are in town. Some of them are very similar, you know, people that have a tree in their front yard that they think is, you know, in the right-of-way that's rotting. That's a very common one. And so you have to get DPW to go out and take a look at it and see if it needs to be taken down. Requests for stop signs at different intersections, things like that. It's mostly, I guess it's mostly DPW stuff and some police stuff, obviously, so.
What I guess we might term as quality of life issues for
Yeah,
a lot of
sure.
residents, and as Tip O'Neill famously said, all politics is local, and you really have to pay attention to the individual and collective concerns of the constituents, and do the best you can to try to at least give them assurance that they're listened to,
Right.
and their concerns are going to be taken seriously. Now, you've had a relationship with Paul Cohen. In fact, when you were elected in 2007, he was already the town manager.
Just barely, yeah,
Just, yeah.
like 3 or 4 months, right?
Right, right. So you've got the most experience on the board in dealing with Paul. And have you seen any kind of progression in Paul's time here in town? In other words, how has he grown into the job, the way he manages, and have you seen, well, just give me your observations on that.
Well, I think he adapts to the board, which I think is a good thing,
Yes.
because different board members are looking for different feedback from him and different responses from him. And I think it's probably especially difficult in a board like what we have now, where 3 members of the board were never elected to any position before. And if the first thing you come into is being on a select board, sometimes those members don't realize the chain of command, I guess you could call it, for lack of a better word. You know, what they should make promises about to constituents, you know, what they should say to them, and how they should follow up. As you said, they shouldn't go directly to the DPW director or the police chief. So I think that has probably been the most challenging part for Paul. I mean, back when I was first elected, it seemed that everybody was in another position before they became.
You had a very experienced board.
Right,
that
either
you joined.
finance committee like yourself,
Right.
or which a lot of people upgrade from finance committee to the board, or planning board to the select board. And I think it can be challenging for the member themselves to know what their responsibilities are, what their authorities are.
It's probably frustrating to a degree, and I would think it would be more frustrating for somebody, as you say, who has not had really much municipal board or government participation experience to be put into that position. And you probably have some idea in your head of what the job is supposed to be, but you know, as we all know, until you're in that person's shoes, you really don't know. Okay?
Right, and some people, you know, try to look at it like a private business, and it's not like a private business. There's so many differences. I mean, there are some similarities, but really not that many. When you look at, you know, municipal finance, municipal law.
That is a very true statement. Just a very quick story. When I first went on FinCom back in 1998, I have a financial background. I'm, you know, a trained accountant and so forth. And well, this is going to be a piece of cake. I mean, because, you know, I understand all this. Well, the first meeting, I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And I thought, well, what's the problem? So as I dug into it and started to do the reading and the research, I realized that, well, of course, accounting concepts are accounting concepts. They don't change public versus private sector, but the terminology is different. You know, and, you know, they call this one thing in municipal, they call it something else in the private business economy and so forth. And it took me about 4 or 5 months, really, to be comfortable with the language so that I knew what the concepts were that they were talking about. And I think that's a hard thing sometimes for a person coming from the private sector into public service to grasp. And you see it on the state and federal level. You see people that are elected to the offices for the first time. And, you know, we just had a president that was like that. And the same thing was true of Mitt Romney when he became governor. You know, we have to run it more like a business. Right. And
although I don't know if I'd compare Mitt Romney to Donald Trump.
No, I wouldn't do that, and I wasn't meaning to do that. But just the, you know, the fact that they were relative neophytes to the political process, you know, and very, very, very interesting. And I can remember saying to Dennis Reddy at one time, "I wish my business ran as well as the town of Chelmsford."
We do have a, you know, very good leadership, financial leadership. Our town accountant and treasurer. The people we have, and if you look at that triumvirate, that town manager, town treasurer, and town accountant, they're excellent as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're going to, on Monday, we're going to be doing a...
I'll throw the assessor into that mix, too.
Okay.
I think Frank is one of the better ones in the state, so, yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that John Souza does, our town treasurer, he's constantly looking for ways to refinance debt and saving us money. On Monday, we're going to issue over $5 million in debt, and the interest rate is going to be less than 1%.
Amazing.
Like 0.92. I mean, that's unheard of.
Especially in this market, what's happening now. Yes,
Right.
that's absolutely correct. Yeah, and John is a worker. When he first got that job, I can remember driving by the town hall on a Sunday afternoon, and I'd see his car. And when he first got that job, he just put in ungodly numbers of hours, you know, to get himself acclimated and up to speed, and, you know, feeling to get to a point where he felt he was really comfortable and could function. Now that, you know, you don't see that kind of dedication in many employees, okay, and you see it less in the public sector. So that absolutely, and I would put the town manager in that same category. I mean, the times that he's available in time off the so-called official clock, I don't think we have a problem. And you're right. My perception is that we have a top-notch management team in place to guide the town. And they're always thinking of the long-term interests of the town. You know, so that means sometimes their decisions on the short term might not be very popular because you have to make the hard decisions. But you have to look forward. What's going to benefit the town 5 years down the road? Do we save a little money here only to have it cost us 10 times more 3 years later? That's probably not a very good decision. It may be politically popular at the time, but the hard decision is, no, let's bite the bullet now, and then not only are we going to get the benefit of whatever it is we've done for the 3 years, but at the end of the 3 years, we're not going to spend 4 times the money to fix what we should have fixed 3 years ago.
Yeah, and one challenge that we're going to have over the next several months is all this ARPA money, you know, from COVID.
And what's that figure?
It's like $10 million.
That's unbelievable.
And I think we have until 2024 or 2026, I don't remember which, to spend it. But obviously everybody wants it. So
yes.
so we're going to have, you know, some public hearings to see what the community thinks. But then it will be, you know, up to the finance team and the select board and town meeting on how it is allocated. So yeah, I mean, it's a one-time opportunity, and we need to use it wisely. You know, we don't want to just you know, draw things out of a bucket, and whatever ones, you know, happen to rise to the top, that's what we do.
I hope that when we have that discussion, I hope that it will focus on long-term capital needs.
Yeah.
Because that would put us in the best position financially going forward. But I think there's enough money in there that you probably can address some short-term operational things that really need attention. But you know, I would hope that the focus would be largely on capital type expenditures.
Yeah, because there are so many things that the capital planning committee evaluates every year, and you know, something might be 2 years out, and then the next year it's still 2 years out, and the next year it's still 2 years out. So maybe if we can finally, you know, get some of those off the list, because they don't really qualify for the highest priority, but they are a priority.
Well, it's very, very important, and the select board, I notice, and I follow the meetings pretty carefully. There seems to be a high level of interest in how the town is managed, and you know, I think generally people want to people who are in these offices, select board, planning board, school committee, and so forth, they really want to do the right thing for the town. You know, we may have philosophical differences on how to get there. But I think most people are there for the right reasons and trying to do the right thing. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and if you don't want to talk about this, you just tell me. But I wasn't thinking about it until the other day, actually, and I realized that your term is up.
That's correct.
So that'll be next April.
Correct.
All right. So any thoughts on that?
I mean,
I'm not going to push you in one direction or the other.
As of right now, I'm planning on running.
Okay.
I mean, I probably won't make a decision for sure until, you know, after Thanksgiving.
That's fair.
Near the end of the year, but I expect that I will. I think there's still a lot that can be done. And I haven't heard of anyone else who's running.
Okay.
And Virginia's term is also up, and I have no idea what her plans are. So.
Well, that's good to know, and I think it's good to have the continuity on the board. So I hope you do decide to run, and I think certainly if you do, because of your tenure and experience, I think you probably stand a pretty good chance of being reelected. So.
Well, I've heard that before, though.
Yeah, I've heard that before, yes. Yeah, what counts is when people actually mark that ballot.
Exactly.
That's what counts. You can have all the signs in the world, you can have all the political parties in the world, you can have everybody in the world tell you they're going to vote for you, but it's when they tally those numbers up, that's when you get the answer.
And like you said earlier, it is going to be interesting with the new precincts. I mean, we're probably going to have, at least 3 different polling locations.
Oh, I would think they'd have to expand that. Yeah. So it looks like we're going to go to 11. And I think that would be the format. So, and I would guess that probably town hall would be one of those.
Yes.
So it would be the senior center, the McCarthy and the town hall.
Correct. That's, yeah, I think that's the anticipation.
Good. Well, Pat, I can't believe it. We're out of time. So
Wow.
we're going to have you, we'll have you back. Don't worry.
Okay.
And we'll get to talk about these things some more. So thank you very much for watching.